The security captain's voice cut across the Memorial Plaza like a blade. "Stop right there. You need to leave. Now." Thomas Ashford froze 50 meters from the entrance. His worn boots, held together with duct tape and fraying laces, scraped against the concrete pathway. The flannel jacket hanging from his shoulders, 3 sizes too large and secured with safety pins, shifted in the morning breeze. His hands, weathered and scarred, hung loose at his sides. "I'm not causing any trouble, sir." Thomas's voice came out quiet, hoarse from months of limited use. "I just want to stand at the back. I won't bother anyone." Captain Brendan Caldwell closed the distance in 4 aggressive strides. At 38, he wore his uniform with parade ground precision, every crease sharp, every button gleaming. His face twisted with contempt as he looked Thomas up and down. "This is a dedication ceremony honoring real heroes, real veterans who actually serve their country, not people like you." Behind Caldwell, workers finished positioning the last chairs in neat rows. The memorial wall rose 20 feet high, bronze plaques gleaming in the October sun, names etched permanently into metal. Sacrifice made visible. Families began arriving in their Sunday best, pressing close to read inscriptions, searching for beloved names among the honored dead. "With respect, Captain," I served. Thomas's hand moved unconsciously toward his chest, fingers brushing the chain hidden beneath his shirt. The dog tags there, worn smooth by 3 decades of constant wear, pressed against his sternum. "I just want to pay my respects." Caldwell's laugh carried across the plaza. Security personnel 30 meters away turned to watch. Early arrivals slowed their approach, sensing confrontation. "Oh, I'm sure you did. Let me guess. Special Forces? Navy SEAL? Everyone like you claims something dramatic." Caldwell's voice rose, ensuring maximum audience. "You probably bought whatever story you're selling at a surplus store for $5. The old man's jaw tightened, just barely, a muscle jumping beneath the salt and pepper beard he'd grown long over 5 years of living rough. His posture remained absolutely still, at attention without trying. Decades of training impossible to erase, even through years of deliberate forgetting. "Sir, I'm asking respectfully." Thomas met Caldwell's eyes without challenge, without heat. Just the quiet dignity of a man who'd learned long ago that some battles couldn't be won with words. "I'll stand at the very edge of the public viewing area. You won't even know I'm here. What I know is that you're making my guests uncomfortable." Caldwell gestured toward the arriving families, toward the reporters setting up cameras, toward the veterans in dress uniforms beginning to gather. "This is about honoring service. Real service. Not whatever story you've convinced yourself is true." He stepped closer, close enough that Thomas could smell coffee and cologne. "I'm going to ask you one more time. Leave, or I call the police and have you removed for trespassing." Thomas's fingers touched the photograph in his jacket pocket, worn soft at the edges. Elena's face smiling up at him from their wedding day. 26 years married. 5 years since cancer took her. 5 years since he'd walked away from everything, because facing an empty house hurt worse than facing nothing at all. "I understand, sir." Thomas's voice barely rose above a whisper, but a reporter 20 feet away heard it. Saw the old man's shoulders, straight despite the threadbare jacket. Saw the way he stood, weight distributed perfectly, ready without appearing ready. Her phone came up, camera recording. What Captain Caldwell didn't know, what nobody in that Memorial Plaza knew, was that the name he was currently preventing from attending was engraved in bronze just 40 meters behind him. What he didn't know was that the old man standing before him with duct-taped boots and safety pin jacket had once held a defensive position for 18 hours in Mogadishu while his team leader bled out his arms. What he didn't know was that 23 soldiers owed their lives to the man he was threatening to arrest. And what he especially didn't know was that in exactly 12 minutes, his career would be over. "You've got 10 seconds. Caldwell's hand moved to his radio. "Then I'm calling this in." He counted down deliberately. 10, 9, 8, making a show of it, making sure everyone watching understood who held power here. Thomas looked past him toward the memorial wall. The angle wrong, the distance too great. But somewhere on that bronze surface among all those names of the fallen, his own name waited, and directly above it, the name that haunted his dreams. Staff Sergeant Vincent Keller, Viper, the best team leader Thomas had ever known. The brother who died so others could live. I'm going. Thomas's voice remained level. No anger, no resentment, just the quiet acceptance of a man who'd learned that the world judged what it could see, not what it couldn't. He turned slowly, began walking back toward the tree line at the edge of the property. But his eyes found the memorial wall one last time, and his lips moved in words only he could hear. Still here, Viper. Still trying. The reporter's phone captured everything. The security captain's theatrical countdown. The old man's dignity under attack. The way Thomas walked with precise, economical steps that seemed out of place. The unconscious habit of his spine straightening when addressed directly. The faded marking barely visible when his sleeve shifted during the turn. She zoomed in on that marking. Enhanced the image. Saw what looked like coordinates. A date. And something else. Something that made her hands start shaking as she cross-referenced military insignia databases on her phone. Because if she was right about what she was seeing, then Captain Caldwell had just made the worst mistake of his professional life. And the ceremony honoring heroes was about to become something none of them would ever forget. 5 years ago, Thomas had sat in a different kind of silence. The hospice room smelled of antiseptic and something else. Something final. Elena's hand and his felt impossibly light. Paper-thin skin over delicate bones. The cancer had taken everything but her eyes. Those still held fire. Promise me something. Her voice barely registered above the machines monitoring her final hours. Promise me you'll keep living. Thomas had squeezed her hand so gently, terrified of breaking what little remained. I promise. Not like this. Elena's eyes found his with laser focus. Not shutting everyone out. Not refusing help. Your brothers will come for you. Let them. Please. She coughed, wetly, and Thomas reached for water with hands that shook. After I'm gone, don't run. He'd lied to her. Told her he wouldn't. Told her he'd accept help, stay connected, keep going. Then 3 days after the funeral, he'd packed a single backpack. Left the house they'd shared for 26 years. Left the photographs on the walls. Left the life he couldn't face without her. The walk to the tree line took Thomas 2 minutes. Far enough from the Memorial Plaza to satisfy Caldwell's demands. Close enough to still see the bronze wall catching morning light. He settled against an oak tree, bark rough against his back through the thin jacket. From here, the names remained illegible, just gleaming metal and shadow. But he knew exactly where to look. Third panel from the left. 17 names down. Vincent Keller's name engraved permanently among the fallen from Operation Gothic Serpent. And directly below it, though Thomas couldn't see it from this distance, his own name. Not among the dead, among the living recipients of the Silver Star. For actions that still woke him screaming 30 years later. A woman approached from the parking area. Mid-30s, professional attire, lanyard identifying her as VA Outreach. Thomas recognized her. Olivia Chun. She'd been trying to reach him for months. Finding him at the shelter. At the soup kitchen. Always gentle. Always persistent. Never pitying. Thomas. Her voice carried warmth without condescension. I saw what happened. I can talk to security. Show them your records. You have every right to be here. He shook his head slowly. It's all right. I could see the wall from here. That's enough. It's not all right. Olivia settled onto the grass beside him, unconcerned about her pressed slacks. Your name is on that wall. You're being honored today. You should be in the front row, not hiding in the trees. Thomas's hand moved to the dog tags under his shirt. 2 sets. His own and the ones he'd pulled from Vincent's neck while arterial blood pumped between his fingers. While Viper's eyes went distant and his last breath rattled out in the dust of Mogadishu. The ones Thomas had carried for 3 decades because leaving them behind felt like abandoning his brother all over again. Viper wouldn't want you out here alone. Olivia spoke quietly. She'd read his file, knew the story, knew about the 18-hour defensive hold, knew about the 23 soldiers extracted safely while Thomas ignored his own wounds and held position over his team leader's body. Viper's dead. Thomas's voice flattened. Doesn't matter what he'd want. You know that's not true. Olivia pulled out her phone, pulled up something she prepared, showed Thomas a photograph. Vincent Keller's sister. She's coming today to see her brother's name. She's been asking about you. Wants to thank you for staying with him, for bringing his tags home. Thomas looked away, toward the memorial, toward the gathering crowd of families and veterans and dignitaries preparing to honor sacrifice. His jaw worked, throat tight. Every day, for 5 years, he'd visited the temporary memorial marker. Before this permanent wall existed, before the plaza had been built, just a simple plaque in a cemetery garden. He'd sit on a bench, trace Vincent's name with fingers that never stopped shaking, talk to his brother about the men they'd served with, about Elena, about how hard it was to keep the promise he'd made while Vincent's blood soaked in African soil. Get them home, Sentinel. Viper's last words. Promise me, not a request. An order from a dying team leader to his operator. And Thomas had obeyed, stayed in position, held the line, got 23 soldiers to the extraction point while his own shoulder bled from shrapnel and his best friend went cold beside him. The ceremony begins in 30 minutes. Olivia stood slowly. I have credentials that will get you past security. You don't have to hide anymore, Thomas. You've been hiding for 5 years. First from grief, then from yourself. Vincent wouldn't want this. Elena wouldn't want this. I'm not hiding. The words came out harder than intended. Thomas softened his voice. I'm just paying respects. From a distance. That's enough. Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded, respected his choice even though disagreement showed in every line of her face. I'll be near the registration tent. If you change your mind, if you need anything. She walked away, leaving Thomas alone with the oak tree and the distant bronze and memories that wouldn't stay buried. He pulled out the photograph from his pocket. Elena on their wedding day, 24 years old and luminous, before deployments and wars and cancer, before he'd learned that surviving didn't mean you'd won. Sometimes surviving just meant you carried more ghosts. The second photograph lived behind the first, Vincent in full gear, taken 3 days before the operation that killed him, grinning at the camera with that cocky smile that made everyone believe they'd all make it home. Thomas had carried both photographs through every mission afterward, through every firefight, through Elena's illness, through 5 years of choosing concrete and shelters over the house that echoed too loud with absence. Still here, brother. Thomas whispered the words that had become his daily mantra. Still trying. But trying for what? That's what he could never answer. Vincent had told him to get the others home. Mission accomplished. Elena had told him to keep living. But breathing wasn't the same as living. And standing in tree lines, watching ceremonies from a distance, wasn't honoring anyone's memory. It was just another kind of hiding. The crowd grew larger. Veterans in dress uniforms. Families holding programs. A television crew setting up. Politicians arriving in town cars. All of them here to honor names on bronze. To remember sacrifice. To promise that service wouldn't be forgotten. Thomas leaned his head back against oak bark. Closed his eyes. Felt the dog tags pressing against his chest. Vincent's and his own. Metal warming from body heat. Evidence of promises made and kept. Evidence of survival that felt more like sentence than salvation. In 28 minutes, everything would change. But for now, Thomas sat in the shadows, watching from distance, doing what he'd done for 5 years. Surviving, but not quite living, and wondering if he'd ever find the difference. Captain Caldwell watched the old man settle against the tree line with satisfaction. Problem solved. Image protected. The ceremony would proceed without blemish. Without the uncomfortable reality of broken veterans reminding everyone that not all stories ended with parades and medals framed on walls. He turned back toward the memorial plaza, already dismissing Thomas from his thoughts. But the reporter hadn't moved. She stood 30 feet away, phone still raised, still recording. Her expression troubled. Is there a problem, ma'am? Caldwell's voice carried that edge of authority that usually made civilians comply immediately. The reporter lowered her phone slowly. That man, the one you just removed, Did you check his credentials? He doesn't have credentials. Caldwell's smile turned condescending. He's homeless. Probably saw the ceremony advertised and thought he could get a free meal. We get this at every veteran event. People claiming service, looking for handouts. You didn't check. The reporter's statement wasn't a question. She glanced toward the tree line where Thomas sat barely visible. I think you should. I've been doing this job for 8 years. Caldwell straightened to his full height. I know the difference between real veterans and people playing dress-up. That man bought whatever story he's selling at a surplus store. Now, if you'll excuse me, we have a ceremony to prepare. He walked away before she could respond. Confident, certain, completely unaware that the reporter was already texting her editor, already uploading the video footage, already cross-referencing the partial tattoo she'd glimpsed against military insignia databases. Near the memorial wall, a young man in army dress uniform stood studying the bronze plaques. Private First Class Jeremy Walsh, 23 years old, fresh from his second deployment to Afghanistan. His fingers traced names reverently, reading histories etched in metal, learning who had walked before him. His eyes stopped on one name. Dommage Ashford, Silver Star, Operation Gothic Serpent, October 34, 1993. Below it, a brief inscription. Held defensive position for 18 hours under heavy fire. Ensured extraction of 23 personnel. Valor beyond measure. Jeremy had studied that action in training. Not the name. The operation itself was classified in most details. But the defensive hold was famous among Rangers. Legendary. The operator who'd stayed in position despite wounds, despite his team leader dying beside him, despite impossible odds. Call sign Sentinel. The instructor spoke about it in reverent tones. One man, 18 hours, 23 lives saved. Jeremy looked toward the security commotion at the plaza entrance. Saw the tail end of Caldwell's confrontation. Saw an old man in worn clothes walking away with shoulders too straight, posture too precise. Something about the way he moved triggered recognition. Rangers moved a certain way. Economy of motion. Balance. Readiness without advertising it. Jeremy had learned to spot it. The bearing never left, even decades after service ended. Even when everything else got stripped away. He pulled out his phone, opened the training materials he'd saved, found the section on legendary operations, scrolled through until he found the Mogadishu briefing. There, a photograph from the medal ceremony. Grainy, 30 years old, but clear enough. Thomas J. Ashford accepting the Silver Star. Younger, harder, cleans haven, but the eyes were the same, the posture identical, and on his forearm, partially visible as he saluted, a tattoo. Ranger scroll with coordinates beneath it. Jeremy's breath caught. He looked toward the tree line, looked back at his phone, looked at the name on the wall. Then he did something his training had taught him never to do. He left his position without permission, started walking toward the trees where the old man had disappeared. Back at the entrance, more families arrived. Among them, a woman in her 50s. Patricia Keller. She moved slowly, reverently, toward the memorial wall, searching for one name among many. Her brother's name. Vincent. Viper. The team leader who died in Mogadishu 30 years ago. She'd been 17 when the notification officers came to her parents' door. She'd watched her mother collapse, watched her father age a decade in a single moment. They told her Vincent died a hero. Save his team. His sacrifice ensured others went home. But there'd been more to the story. Details that came years later. From veterans who'd served with Vincent. From after-action reports finally declassified. Her brother hadn't died alone. Someone had stayed with him. Held position over his body for 18 hours. Made sure he came home even though bringing him home alive was impossible. Patricia had spent years trying to find that someone. Trying to thank the person who'd kept her brother company in his final moments. Who'd made sure Vincent wasn't alone when he died. The Army gave her a name eventually. Thomas Ashford, call sign Sentinel. But finding him proved impossible. He'd left the service. Disappeared into civilian life. No forwarding address. No contact information. Now she stood before the memorial wall. Found Vincent's name exactly where they told her it would be. Third panel, 17 down. Her fingers touched bronze. Traced the letters. Vincent P. Keller, Staff Sergeant, 75th Ranger Regiment. October 3rd, 1993. Killed in action. And directly below it, Dommage faute. Silver Star. Same date. Same operation. Same place where her brother had bled out in African dust. Patricia's vision blurred with tears. So close. The man who'd stayed with Vincent was honored on the same wall. But where was he? She'd written to the ceremony organizers. Asked if Thomas Ashford would be attending. They'd said they'd try to reach him. No response. No confirmation. Probably wouldn't come. Mom? A voice interrupted her grief. Are you all right? Patricia turned. Found a young ranger standing beside her. Concern clear on his face. She wiped her eyes. I'm fine. Just emotional. My brother's name is here. Vincent Keller? Jeremy had seen her touching that section. Had put together the resemblance. Same chin. Same eyes. You look like him. Did you know him? Hope flared in Patricia's voice. No, ma'am. I wasn't born yet when he died. But I know the story. I know what happened that day. Jeremy hesitated, then made a decision that would change everything. Ma'am, I think there's something you should know. The man who stayed with your brother. Thomas Ashford. I think he's here. Patricia's hand flew to her mouth. Where? Jeremy pointed toward the tree line. Security removed him about 10 minutes ago. Captain Caldwell said he was homeless. Said he was lying about service. But ma'am, I've seen the training photos. I know what Sentinel looks like. And that man they removed? His bearing, his movement, the way he carries himself. I think that's him. The world tilted. Patricia grabbed the memorial wall for support. You're telling me that security threw out the man being honored on this wall? The man who saved 23 soldiers? Who stayed with my brother when he died? Yes, ma'am. I think that's exactly what happened. Patricia's grief transformed into something harder. Something angrier. She looked toward the plaza where Captain Caldwell stood, coordinating security with smug efficiency. Then she looked toward the registration area. Found the woman with the VA lanyard. Olivia Chun. Someone who might have answers. Come with me. Patricia's voice carried steel that reminded Jeremy exactly whose sister she was. We're going to fix this. Right now. They walked together toward Olivia. Toward truth. Toward the moment when Captain Caldwell's certainty would shatter. Behind them, the reporter uploaded her final video clip. The footage that would go viral within hours. The old man's dignity. The security captain's contempt. The name on the wall behind them that nobody had bothered to check. In the tree line, Thomas sat watching families find their loved ones' names. Watching tears and memories and pride. Not knowing that in exactly 8 minutes, his anonymity would end. That recognition was coming whether he wanted it or not. Still here, Viper. He touched the dog tags through his shirt. Still trying. October 3rd, 1993. Mogadishu, Somalia. The air tasted like dust and cordite and fear. Thomas crouched behind crumbling concrete, Barrett M82 sniper rifle steady against his shoulder. 200 meters out. Overwatch position. Eyes on the target building where the extraction was happening. Sentinel, this is Viper. Vincent's voice came through clear on comms. We're going in. Keep us covered. Roger that. Thomas scanned rooftops, windows, doorways, looking for the threats that would come. They always came in Mogadishu. The city was a hornet's nest. Every operation stirred it up. Every mission brought fire. The team moved fast, breached the building, secured the asset. Textbook operation. In and out in 4 minutes. Then the world exploded. RPG from the north window. Thomas's training took over. Identified the shooter. Acquired target. Fired. The window shattered. Threat eliminated. But there were more. Always more. Contact. Vincent's voice sharp with adrenaline. We're taking fire from multiple positions. Sentinel, we need suppression on the east rooftop. Thomas shifted aim. Found the shooters. Began working through targets with mechanical precision. One shot. One kill. Move to next threat. Breathe. Squeeze. The rifle became an extension of his will. Each round buying seconds. Each second buying lives. We're moving to extraction point Alpha. Viper sounded calm. Too calm. The voice of a man controlling fear through sheer discipline. Heavy resistance. Gonna be close. I've got you. Thomas kept firing, covering their movement, watching his brothers fight through a gauntlet of bullets to reach safety. Almost there. They were almost there. Then the second RPG hit. Thomas saw it launch, saw the smoke trail, saw it impact the doorway his team was moving through, the doorway Vincent was leading them through. The explosion turned the world white. Vipers down. Someone screamed through comms. Man down. Medic. Thomas's heart stopped. His hands kept moving. Muscle memory overriding panic. He maintained suppression fire, kept the enemy pinned, watched through his scope as teammates dragged Vincent's body into cover. Watched blood spreading. Too much blood. Sentinel, this is command. Extract immediately. Area too hot. Grab Viper and get to the rally point. Negative. Thomas's voice came out flat. Cold. They're trapped. I'm staying in position, keeping them covered until air support arrives. Sentinel, that's 14 hours out minimum. You cannot hold that position for 14 hours. Watch me. Thomas settled deeper into his position. Checked ammunition. 200 rounds. It would have to be enough. Below him, his team huddled in cover. Vincent bleeding out. No medic. No supplies. Just Rangers refusing to leave a brother behind. The hours blurred together. Thomas fired when targets appeared. Conserved ammunition when they didn't. His shoulder burned where shrapnel from that first RPG had torn through. Blood soaked his uniform. He ignored it. Pain was information. Information was tactical. Nothing else mattered. Through his scope, he watched Vincent die. Watched teammates try to stop the bleeding with field dressings that couldn't compete with a severed femoral artery. Watched Viper's movements slow. Stop. Watched the best team leader Thomas had ever known go still in the Mogadishu dust. Sentinel. A new voice on comms. Ragged. Breaking. It was Walker, Vincent's point man. He's gone. Viper's gone. Thomas's finger tightened on the trigger. Found another target. Fired. The scope hit his tears. I know. Stay down. I've got you covered. 6 hours in, his right shoulder stopped working properly. The shrapnel wound had damaged something critical. Thomas switched to his left hand. Kept firing. Kept buying time. Kept the promise he'd made when he joined the Rangers. Nobody left behind. Not ever. Not even the dead. 12 hours in, ammunition ran low. 50 rounds remaining. Thomas rationed them carefully. 1 shot per threat. No boistidrones. No second chances. Below, his team stayed alive because he made it too costly for the enemy to advance. Because one man with a rifle and determination could hold a position if he was willing to pay the price. 14 hours in, darkness fell. Thomas switched to night vision. His body screamed. Dehydration. Blood loss. Exhaustion. He ignored all of it. Viper was dead. The team was trapped. Nothing else registered as important. 18 hours in, the helicopters finally came. Extraction birds with door gunners laying down suppression fire. Rangers on the ground grabbed Vincent's body, grabbed their gear, ran for the birds while Thomas fired his last magazine, covering their movement, making sure they made it. Sentinel, you're clear. Get to the bird. Thomas ran, legs that barely functioned carrying him across open ground while bullets cracked past his head. Hands grabbed him, pulled him aboard. The helicopter lifted. Mogadishu fell away beneath them. You held that position for 18 hours. Walker stared at Thomas like he'd seen a ghost, with a broken shoulder. How? Thomas looked at Vincent's body wrapped in a poncho, at the blood-soaked fabric, at the man who'd told him to get them home. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The answer was right there. You didn't leave brothers behind. Not the living. Not the dead. Not ever. In the present, Thomas opened his eyes. The memorial wall gleamed in morning sun. The oak bark pressed rough against his spine. 30 years had passed since Mogadishu. 30 years since Vincent died. 30 years since Thomas learned that surviving didn't mean winning. His shoulder throbbed. Ghost pain from wounds long healed. Or maybe not healed. Maybe just hidden. Like everything else he carried. Patricia Keller stood before the wall now. Thomas could see her from his position. Could see her touching Vincent's name. Could see tears streaming down her face. Vincent's little sister, 17, when notification officers came to her door. 47 now, still mourning. Thomas should go to her, should introduce himself, should tell her that Vincent's last words were about getting the team home, that he died giving orders, died a leader, died saving others. But Thomas's legs wouldn't move, couldn't face her, couldn't look into eyes that resembled Vincent's and explain why he'd survived when her brother hadn't. Couldn't explain that every day for 30 years, he'd asked himself that same question. Why me? Why did I get to keep breathing when Viper didn't? What made my life worth more than his? Elena had tried to answer that question, had told him survival wasn't a competition, wasn't about worth, was just chance and circumstance and chaos. That Vincent would want him to keep living, keep serving, keep honoring the sacrifice by making it mean something. But Elena was gone now too, and Thomas sat in tree lines watching ceremonies from a distance, hiding from the people who wanted to thank him, hiding from recognition he didn't deserve, hiding from everything except the guilt that followed him everywhere. Still here, brother, Thomas whispered to Vincent's ghost, to the memory that haunted every moment. Still trying, but I don't know what I'm trying for anymore. Don't know if I ever did. In 5 minutes, that question would be answered for him. In 5 minutes, recognition would find him whether he wanted it or not, whether he felt ready or not, whether he thought he deserved it or not. The truth was coming, and Thomas had run out of places to hide. Patricia Keller moved with purpose across the plaza. Jeremy Walsh kept pace beside her, his dress uniform drawing respectful nods from other veterans. They found Olivia Chun near the registration tent, tablet in hand, checking names against the guest list. "Excuse me." Patricia's voice carried the same command her brothers had, the same steel underneath politeness. "I need to speak with you about Thomas Ashford." Olivia looked up sharply. Her expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine concern. "You know Thomas? I am Patricia Keller, Vincent Keller's sister." Patricia watched recognition dawn on Olivia's face. "Thomas was my brother's operator. He stayed with Vincent when he died. I've been trying to find him for years. This young man tells me security removed him from the ceremony honoring him." Olivia's jaw tightened. She glanced toward the tree line where Thomas sat barely visible, then back toward the plaza where Caldwell strutted among arriving dignitaries. Yes, Captain Caldwell had him removed. Thomas didn't fight it. He never does. He's been refusing help for 5 years. Where is he now? Patricia's hands clenched into fists. "I need to see him. I need to thank him. He's there." Olivia pointed toward the oak tree. "But Ms. Keller, you should know that Thomas doesn't think he deserves thanks. He carries tremendous guilt about your brother's death, about surviving when Vincent didn't. I've been working with him for months. He pushes everyone away. I don't care what he thinks he deserves." Patricia's voice broke slightly. "He gave my brother dignity in death. He made sure Vincent came home. He held a position for 18 hours with a broken shoulder to protect my brother's body and save 23 other soldiers. He deserves recognition whether he wants it or not." The ceremony speakers crackled to life. Testing. 1, 2. On the stage, organizers made final adjustments. In 20 minutes, the dedication would begin. Speeches would be made. Names would be read. Thomas Ashford's name would be called, and he wouldn't be there to hear it. Jeremy cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I have training materials on my phone. Photographs from the medal ceremony. Documentation of the Mogadishu operation. If Captain Caldwell won't listen to us, maybe he'll listen to official records." "He won't." Olivia shook her head. "I've tried showing him Thomas's records before, at other events. Caldwell believes what he wants to believe. He sees a homeless man and his mind stops there. Doesn't matter what the paperwork says." Then we go over his head. Patricia scanned the plaza, looking for someone with more authority, more influence, someone who could override Caldwell's decision. Her eyes landed on a woman in Air Force dress blues, Colonel's eagles on her shoulders. Name tape, Red Rains. Where's the ceremony coordinator? That would be Colonel Rains. Olivia followed Patricia's gaze. She's retired Air Force, runs the Memorial Foundation. She's giving the keynote speech. Perfect. Patricia started walking. Jeremy and Olivia exchanged glances, then followed. They crossed the plaza in formation. 3 people on a mission. 3 people who decided that enough was enough. Colonel Rain stood near the memorial wall, reviewing her notes. She looked up as Patricia approached, saw the determination, the resemblance to one of the names on the bronze. Her expression softened with understanding. Can I help you? Colonel Rains, I'm Patricia Kellev. My brother Vincent is honored on this wall. Patricia's voice remained steady despite emotion threatening to break through. There's been a serious error. The man who saved my brother's team, the man whose name appears directly below my brother's on that wall, was removed from this ceremony by security. Told he was lying about his service. Threatened with arrest. Rains's eyes went hard. Which man? Thomas Ashford, Silver Star recipient. Call sign Sentinel. Jeremy stepped forward, phone extended. I have documentation. Training materials from Ranger School. His actions are taught as legendary defensive tactics. Ma'am, I recognized him immediately. The way he moves, the bearing. And when his sleeve shifted, I saw the tattoo. Ranger scroll with coordinates beneath it. Rains took the phone, studied the photograph of young Thomas accepting his medal 30 years ago. Looked at the training materials. Read the operation summary. Her face drained of color. Where is he now? Tree line. Easter edge. Olivia pointed. He's been sitting there for 30 minutes. Watching from a distance. He does this. Shows up to veteran events, but won't come inside. Won't accept recognition. Believes he doesn't deserve it. And which security officer removed him? Rains's voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. Captain Caldwell. Patricia's words came out clipped. Head of security. He accused Thomas of buying his story at a surplus store. Made a public spectacle of removing him. There's video. Show me. Rains held out her hand. The reporter who'd filmed the confrontation had sent the footage to Olivia. She pulled it up. Let Rains watch Caldwell's theatrical countdown. Thomas's quiet dignity. The way he'd said, yes, sir. I understand, sir, before walking away. Rains's hands shook with barely controlled fury. She looked toward the tree line, then toward Caldwell, who stood coordinating his security team with smug satisfaction. Then back to the memorial wall, where Thomas's name gleamed in bronze. That man held a defensive position for 18 hours to save 23 soldiers. Rains spoke quietly, precisely, each word carrying weight. He's being honored at this ceremony. His name is engraved on this wall. And Captain Caldwell, who has never seen combat, who has never saved a single life, removed him like garbage. Yes, ma'am. Jeremy stood at attention. That's exactly what happened. Rains handed back the phone, straightened her uniform, made a decision that would alter the entire trajectory of the ceremony. Here's what's going to happen. Ms. Keller, you're going to go to that tree line. You're going to talk to Thomas. You're going to tell him that Vincent's sister has been looking for him, that she needs to thank him, that he has a place of honor at this ceremony, whether he thinks he deserves it or not. Patricia nodded. Already moving. Private Walsh. Rains turned to Jeremy. You're going to escort Ms. Keller. You're going to tell Thomas that his actions are still taught at Ranger School, that new generations of operators study what he did, that his call sign is spoken with reverence. Yes, ma'am. Jeremy's voice carried pride. Ms. Chun. Rains focused on Olivia. You're going to get Thomas's formal invitation, the one we sent months ago, the one requesting his presence as guest of honor. Find it. Already have it. Olivia pulled up the email on her tablet. Sent certified mail. He never responded, but we have confirmation he received it. Good. Rains's smile held no warmth, only cold purpose. Because in approximately 15 minutes, I'm going to call Captain Caldwell into my office. I'm going to show him that video. I'm going to show him Thomas's records. I'm going to show him the invitation. And then I'm going to explain exactly how catastrophically he has failed in his duties. By the time I'm done, Caldwell won't be head of security. He'll be lucky to be employed at all. The 3 of them moved to their assigned tasks. Patricia and Jeremy toward the tree line. Olivia toward her vehicle to retrieve additional documentation. And Rains toward the temporary office where Caldwell's certainty was about to shatter. In the tree line, Thomas watched the ceremony preparations continue, unaware that recognition was walking toward him, unaware that his anonymity was ending, unaware that in 12 minutes, everything would change. Still here, Viper. He touched the dog tags, but for how much longer, he couldn't say. Thomas heard footsteps approaching through fallen leaves. 2 sets, moving with purpose but not aggression. He didn't look up, didn't need to. After 5 years on the streets, he'd learned to identify threat levels by sound alone. These weren't threats. Thomas Ashford? A woman's voice, familiar somehow, like an echo of something he'd heard 3 decades ago. He looked up slowly, found a woman in her late 40s standing 10 feet away. Behind her, the young ranger he'd noticed earlier studying the memorial wall. The woman's eyes were what stopped him. Sharp, intelligent, carrying grief that never quite healed. He'd seen those eyes before, in a different face, a younger face. In photographs Vincent had carried in his wallet. "You're Patricia." Thomas's voice came out rough. Viper's sister. Her hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled immediately. "You remember me? Vincent talked about you all the time." Thomas stood slowly, joints protesting. "Show me pictures. Said you were going to be a teacher. Said you were the smart one in the family." "I'm a teacher." Patricia took a step closer. "History. High school. I tell my students about my brother every year when we study Somalia. Tell them about the rangers who fought there, about the operators who held the line." Thomas looked away, toward the memorial, toward Vincent's name he couldn't see from this distance, but knew exactly where to find. He was a good man, a great leader. "I'm sorry I couldn't bring him home alive." "You brought him home." Patricia's voice broke. "You stayed with him for 18 hours. You held position with a broken shoulder. You made sure he wasn't alone. You made sure he wasn't left behind. Do you have any idea what that meant to my family? To know that someone cared enough to stay? I made a promise." Thomas's hand moved to the dog tags under his shirt. "To Vincent. To get them home. All of them." The young ranger stepped forward. "Sir, I'm Private First Class Jeremy Walsh. I studied your action at Ranger School. The Mogadishu Defensive Hold. It's taught as one of the most remarkable displays of individual courage in modern combat history. Your call sign is legendary." Thomas flinched at the word. Sentinel isn't legendary. Sentinel is the man who missed the second RPG, who didn't see the launcher in time, who let his team leader die. "With respect, sir, that's not what happened." Jeremy pulled out his phone, showed Thomas the after-action reports, the declassified analysis. "You eliminated 47 enemy combatants during that 18-hour hold. You were outnumbered 20-1. You had a broken shoulder and significant blood loss. Command said the position was indefensible. You defended it anyway. You saved 23 lives. 22. Thomas corrected quietly. Vincent didn't make it. 23. Patricia moved closer, put her hand on Thomas's arm, felt him tense, but not pull away. "Because you saved yourself too. You survived. You came home. That counts. That matters." Thomas shook his head, started to retreat further into the trees. "This was a mistake. I shouldn't have come. I just wanted to see the memorial. See Vincent's name. I should go. Your name is on that wall, too." Patricia's words stopped him cold. Right below Vincent's. Dommage Ashford. Silver Star. Operation Gothic Serpent. "You're being honored today. You were invited as a guest of honor. You belong here. I don't belong anywhere." The words came out harsher than intended. Thomas softened his tone. "I appreciate you coming to talk to me. I appreciate what you're trying to do. But I'm fine out here. I can see the wall. That's enough." "It's not enough." Jeremy's voice carried conviction beyond his years. "Sir, do you know what Captain Caldwell did? He removed you from a ceremony honoring you. He threatened you with arrest. He accused you of stolen valor. He did all of this while your name was engraved in bronze 40 meters behind him, while families of the men you saved were arriving to thank you." Thomas's jaw tightened. Caldwell was doing his job, protecting the ceremony. "I understand." "No." Patricia's voice turned sharp. "He was abusing his power. He was judging you by your appearance without checking credentials, without doing basic due diligence, without showing the respect owed to every veteran, let alone a Silver Star recipient. Doesn't matter." Thomas turned back toward the memorial. The ceremony starts in 10 minutes. You should get back. I'll watch from here. Colonel Rains wants to meet you. Jeremy played his final card. She's the ceremony coordinator. Retired Air Force colonel. She saw the video of what Caldwell did. She's furious. She wants you in the front row where you belong. I don't want to make a scene. Thomas's resistance was weakening. Patricia could hear it, could see it in the way his shoulders slumped slightly, in the way his hand kept touching the dog tags, in the way his eyes kept drifting toward the memorial wall. You won't make a scene. Patricia moved to stand directly in his line of sight. I will. Jeremy will. Olivia will. Colonel Rains will. We're making a scene whether you're there or not. The only question is whether you'll be there to accept the recognition you earned. That Vincent would want you to accept. At Vincent's name, Thomas's resistance crumbled. Patricia saw it happen, saw the moment his walls came down, saw the exhaustion underneath. The bone-deep weariness of a man who'd been fighting himself for too long. I don't have proper clothes. Thomas gestured to his flannel jacket, his duct-tape boots. I look like exactly what Caldwell said I am. You look like a man who's been surviving. Jeremy's voice carried respect, like a man who's been through hell and kept walking. There's no shame in that, sir. And for what it's worth, half the Rangers I serve with would give anything to shake your hand. Clothes don't matter. What you did matters. Patricia reached into her bag, pulled out a challenge coin. Vincent's coin from Ranger School. She'd carried it for 30 years. Held out her hand. Vincent would want you there. He'd want you to stop punishing yourself for surviving. He'd want you to accept help, to let people thank you, to honor his memory by honoring your own service. Thomas looked at the coin, at Vincent's sister's tear-stained face, at the young ranger standing at attention with genuine admiration, at the memorial wall where both their names waited in bronze. He thought about Elena's last words, about promises made and broken, about 5 years of hiding from everything except guilt. He thought about Vincent bleeding out in Mogadishu dust, about the promise extracted with dying breaths. Get them home, Sentinel. Not just the team. Himself, too. Get himself home. Stop running. Stop hiding. Accept that survival wasn't betrayal. Thomas took the challenge coin, felt the weight of it, the history, the brotherhood, the expectation that he'd finally stop punishing himself for the crime of living. All right. His voice barely rose above a whisper. All right, I'll come. Patricia smiled through tears, threw her arms around him. First human embrace with genuine affection Thomas had felt in 5 years. He stood rigid at first, then slowly, carefully returned it. Let himself feel connection. Let himself accept care. Jeremy came to attention, rendered a salute sharp enough to cut glass. Thomas, on instinct, returned it. Muscle memory from 3 decades ago. The soldier emerging from beneath layers of survival and grief. We need to move. Jeremy checked his watch. Ceremony starts in 7 minutes. Colonel Rains will want you on stage. On stage? Thomas pulled back from Patricia. I thought front row. You're receiving formal recognition. Patricia took his arm, guided him toward the plaza. You're being honored. That means stage. That means everyone's seeing you. Everyone knowing what you did. Thomas's steps faltered. This was too much. Too public. Too exposed. But Patricia and Jeremy kept him moving. Kept him walking toward the memorial. Toward recognition. Toward the moment his anonymity would end forever. Still here, Viper. Thomas thought the words instead of speaking them. Coming home. Finally. They walked across the plaza together. Patricia on one side, Jeremy on the other, flanking Thomas like an honor guard. Eyes turned toward them. Whispers started. The homeless man security had removed was returning. Walking with purpose. Walking with escorts who treated him with reverence. Captain Caldwell saw them first. His face flushed red. He moved to intercept, hand already reaching for his radio. I thought I made myself clear. You need to leave these premises immediately, or I will have you arrested for trespassing. Stand down, Captain. Colonel Rains appeared from the temporary office, voice cutting across the plaza like a whip crack. She held a tablet in one hand, the video footage cued and ready. This man is Thomas Ashford, Silver Star recipient, guest of honor at this ceremony. The man whose name is engraved on the wall you're supposed to be protecting. Caldwell's certainty wavered. He looked at Thomas's worn clothes, his duct-taped boots, his weathered face. This is the man claiming to be a veteran. I've dealt with frauds before, Colonel. They all have stories. This isn't a story. Raines thrust the tablet toward him. This is documentation. Service records. Medal citations. Invitations sent to him 3 months ago requesting his presence as guest of honor. Everything you should have checked before you humiliated him in front of witnesses. Caldwell took the tablet reluctantly, scrolled through the records. His face went from red to white. The video footage showed his own contemptuous voice. The theatrical countdown. Thomas's quiet dignity. The name on the wall behind them that Caldwell had never bothered to verify. I was protecting the ceremony. Caldwell's voice lost its command. From potential disruption. Standard protocol for events of this magnitude requires screening all attendees. Standard protocol requires treating veterans with basic respect. Raines took back the tablet. Requires checking credentials before making accusations. Requires not threatening Silver Star recipients with arrest while their names are literally engraved behind you honoring their service. The crowd was gathering now. Other veterans. Families. The reporter with her phone still recording. They formed a loose circle around the confrontation, watching Caldwell's authority crumble in real time. Thomas stood silent, uncomfortable with the attention, with being the center of conflict. He wanted to slip in quietly, pay respects, leave. Now the entire ceremony had stopped to witness his vindication. This was what he'd feared, what he'd avoided for 5 years. Being seen, being known. Being forced to accept recognition he didn't believe he deserved. Patricia felt him tense beside her, felt him preparing to retreat. She tightened her grip on his arm. Stay. Her voice meant only for him. Vincent would stay. He want you to stay. At the memorial wall, more families had gathered. Among them, an older man in a wheelchair. Silver hair, weathered face. Ranger tab visible on his Vietnam veteran cap. He'd been watching the confrontation with growing interest. Now he wheeled himself closer, squinting at Thomas through the crowd. Sentinel? The old man's voice cracked. That you? Thomas turned, looked at the face, tried to place it through 30 years of distance and aging. The voice triggered something. Memory surfacing. Walker, point man from Vincent's team. The ranger who'd been there when Viper died, who'd helped carry Vincent's body to the extraction bird. Walker wheeled closer, tears streaming freely down his face. Brother, we've been looking for you for years. Command tried to track you down for reunions. For memorials. You vanished. I left. Thomas's voice came out rough. After Elena died. After I couldn't face the empty house. Couldn't face the memories. I just left. We heard. Walker reached out. Gripped Thomas's hand with surprising strength. Heard your wife passed. Heard you disappeared. We never stopped looking. Never stopped wanting to thank you for Mogadishu. For getting us out. For staying with Viper. Caldwell stood frozen, watching his certainty shatter completely. This wasn't fraud. Wasn't performance. This was real recognition between brothers who'd bled together. Real grief. Real history. More veterans approached. Men in their 50s and 60s. Rangers who'd served in Somalia. Who trained under the instructors who taught Mogadishu as legendary defensive tactics. They formed a line, not crowding, just present, bearing witness. Colonel Raines let the moment breathe. Let Thomas see that he wasn't alone, that the Brotherhood hadn't forgotten him even when he'd forgotten himself. Then she spoke quietly. The ceremony begins in 3 minutes. Thomas, you have a seat reserved on stage, front and center, if you're willing. Thomas looked at the stage, at the rows of chairs for dignitaries and honored guests, at the podium where speakers would tell stories of valor and sacrifice, at the memorial wall visible behind it all. Vincent's name, his own name, both engraved forever in bronze. He could still walk away, could retreat to the tree line, could disappear back into anonymity. Nobody would stop him. Patricia would be disappointed. The veterans would understand. Raines would adjust the program. Life would continue. But Vincent's voice echoed in memory. Not the dying words. Different words. Earlier words. From before Mogadishu. from training, from the countless operations they'd run together. Viper's leadership philosophy distilled to one principle. We take care of our own. We show up for each other. We don't hide from the hard things. Thomas had been hiding for 5 years. From grief, from guilt, from the hard thing of accepting that survival wasn't betrayal. That living didn't mean forgetting. That honoring the dead meant also honoring yourself. He touched the dog tags under his shirt, Vincent's and his own, metal warming from body heat. Evidence of brotherhood that death couldn't sever. Evidence that some promises lasted beyond the grave. I'll sit on stage. Thomas's voice grew stronger. For Vincent, for the men we lost, for the ones who made it home. Patricia squeezed his arm, smiled through fresh tears. Jeremy came to attention again. Walker saluted from his wheelchair. Rains nodded with satisfaction, and Caldwell stood apart, realizing the magnitude of his failure as his superior officer watched with cold assessment. They moved toward the stage, Thomas between Patricia and Jeremy, Walker wheeling alongside, other veterans falling into formation behind them. An impromptu honor guard for a man who'd spent 5 years believing he deserved nothing. The reporter filmed everything. The moment Thomas climbed the stage stairs with careful dignity. The moment he took his seat front and center. The moment the entire assembled crowd saw him clearly. Saw the worn clothes and weathered face. Saw the straight spine and precise movements. Saw the dog tags visible now against his chest. Saw him for what he was. Not homeless, not fraud, but brother, operator, hero, survivor who'd finally stopped running. Rains moved to the podium, adjusted the microphone, looked out over the assembled crowd of hundreds. Families, veterans, press, dignitaries, all gathered to honor the names on the wall, all about to witness something none of them had expected. Before we begin the formal ceremony, Rains's voice carried across the plaza. I need to address something that happened this morning, something that cannot go unremarked. Her eyes found Caldwell in the crowd, found him shrinking under scrutiny, found him understanding that consequences were coming. This morning, our head of security removed a man from the ceremony, accused him of fraud, threatened him with arrest, did so without checking credentials, without verifying identity, without showing basic respect owed to every person who claims service to this country. The crowd went silent, all eyes on Rains, all attention focused. That man now sits before you on this stage. Rains gestured to Thomas. His name is Thomas Ashford, call sign Sentinel. He is a recipient of the Silver Star. His actions on October 3rd and 4th, 1993 in Mogadishu, Somalia saved 23 lives. His name is engraved on the wall behind me. And he almost missed this ceremony because we failed him. Thomas sat motionless, face burning, wanting to disappear. But Patricia's hand found his, squeezed, anchored him, reminded him that this wasn't about him alone. This was about Vincent, about Walker, about every veteran who'd ever been judged by appearance instead of service. The truth was coming, and Thomas couldn't hide anymore. Rains let the silence stretch. Let her words sink into the assembled crowd. Let Caldwell feel the weight of hundreds of eyes turning toward him, judging him the way he'd judged Thomas, finding him wanting. Captain Caldwell will be relieved of his duties effective immediately. Rains spoke with finality. His position will be filled by someone who understands that respect is earned through verification, not assumption. Someone who knows that veterans come in many forms. Some in dress uniforms, some in suits, and some in worn jackets held together with safety pins because they've spent 5 years surviving on streets rather than accepting help they believe they don't deserve. Caldwell's face went from white to gray. He opened his mouth to protest, found no words, nothing that could undo what he'd done, nothing that could erase the video of his contempt, nothing that could justify removing a Silver Star recipient from a ceremony honoring him. He turned and walked away, through the crowd that parted silently, through the judgment that followed him, away from the career he'd just destroyed through arrogance and assumptions. Thomas watched him go, felt no satisfaction, no vindication, just exhaustion. This was why he'd avoided recognition. Why he'd hidden for 5 years. Because attention meant conflict, meant disruption, meant becoming the center of something larger than himself. Now, Rains turned back to the crowd. Her voice softened. Let me tell you about the man sitting on this stage. Let me tell you what Thomas Ashford did 30 years ago that earned him the silver star and a place on this wall. Thomas's hands gripped the arms of his chair. Patricia leaned close, whispered, "Breathe. Just breathe. This is for Vincent, too." On October 3rd, 1993, Rains began. A ranger team deployed to Mogadishu, Somalia, as part of Operation Gothic Serpent. Their mission was to extract a high-value target from a hostile urban environment. The operation was supposed to take 30 minutes. It lasted 18 hours. The crowd leaned forward, listening, the veterans among them knowing this story, the civilians hearing it for the first time. Staff Sergeant Vincent Keller led that team. Rains gestured to the memorial wall. To Vincent's name engraved, third panel from left, 17 down. He breached first, led his rangers into the target building, secured the asset, was moving to extraction when an RPG struck the doorway. Vincent took the blast, suffered catastrophic injuries. His team was pinned down, unable to move, unable to call for immediate extraction through hostile fire. Patricia's hand found Thomas's again, held tight, her brother's death being recounted for hundreds of strangers. But necessary, part of the story, part of why Thomas mattered. 200 meters away, Rains continued. Specialist Thomas Ashford held an overwatch position. Sniper, Barrett M82. When Vincent went down, when the team was trapped, Thomas made a choice. He could extract, leave the area, return to base, or he could stay, provide cover, buy time for his brothers to survive until rescue arrived. The reporter's camera captured Thomas's face, the way his jaw clenched, the way his eyes fixed on something distant, on memory, on 18 hours that never ended in his mind. Thomas chose to stay. Rains's voice gained strength. He held that position for 18 hours, through darkness, through enemy fire, through his own wounds when shrapnel from the first RPG tore through his shoulder. He eliminated 47 enemy combatants, conserved ammunition, rationed water, ignored blood loss and exhaustion, all to keep his brothers alive, all to make sure Vincent Keller wasn't left behind. Walker wheeled himself closer to the stage. Other Mogadishu veterans moved forward too. Witnesses, brothers who'd been there, who'd lived because Thomas stayed. When extraction finally arrived, Rains paused, let the weight of those words settle. Thomas had been in position for 18 hours with a broken shoulder and significant blood loss. He'd held the line. He'd saved 23 lives. And he'd made sure his team leader came home, even though Vincent was already gone. Even though staying meant risking everything for a brother who died in the first minutes of that 18-hour hell. The crowd stood silent, processing, understanding, seeing Thomas not as homeless, not as fraud, but as what he was. A ranger who'd kept faith with the creed, a brother who'd honored his promise, a survivor who'd paid a price that showed in every line of his weathered face. Thomas. Rains spoke directly to him now. Would you stand, please? Thomas stood slowly, legs uncertain. Patricia and Jeremy rose with him, flanking him, supporting him. Would you tell us? Rains kept her voice gentle. In your own words, why you stayed, why you held that position for 18 hours. The crowd waited, hundreds of eyes on Thomas, cameras recording, history being made. And Thomas stood there in his worn flannel and duct-tape boots, trying to find words for something that lived beyond language. Vincent told me to get them home. Thomas's voice came out quiet, rough, but the microphones caught it, carried it across the plaza. His last words, before he died, he said, "Get them home, Sentinel. Promise me." So I promised. He paused, swallowed hard, continued. I couldn't save Vincent. I missed the second RPG. Didn't see the launcher in time. Didn't protect my team leader the way I should have. But I could keep my promise. Could make sure the rest came home. Could make sure Vincent came home even though alive wasn't possible anymore. The silence was absolute, broken only by wind rustling through trees, by someone in the crowd crying quietly. I held position because leaving would mean breaking my word. Thomas's voice strengthened. Because Rangers don't leave Rangers behind. Because Vincent deserved better than dying alone in hostile territory. Because the 23 men trapped with his body deserved to see their families again. That's why I stayed. Patricia stood, tears streaming, moved to Thomas's side. This man stayed with my brother for 18 hours. Made sure Vincent wasn't alone. Made sure he came home to be buried with honor. My family has been trying to thank him for 30 years. And this morning, security almost prevented that from happening. Walker wheeled to the base of the stage. His voice carried despite age and emotion. Sentinel saved my life. Saved all our lives. We owe him everything. And he's been living on streets for 5 years because he believes surviving means he failed. Because he carries guilt for being alive when better men died. He looked up at Thomas, met his eyes. Brother, you didn't fail. You kept faith. You honored your promise. Vincent would be proud. Would want you to stop punishing yourself. Would want you to accept that you deserve help. Deserve recognition. Deserve to come home. Thomas's walls crumbled completely. 5 years of holding everything in. 5 years of refusing help. 5 years of believing survival was betrayal. It all broke in that moment. He stood on stage with tears streaming down his face and hundreds of witnesses watching him finally accept that living wasn't a crime. Rains moved to stand beside him, the ceremony coordinator, the colonel who'd seen injustice and corrected it, who'd given Thomas the recognition he'd been running from. Ladies and gentlemen, Rains addressed the crowd. Thomas Ashford's name is engraved on this wall, not among the dead, among the living who earned the Silver Star through extraordinary valor. He belongs here. He's always belonged here. And anyone who says otherwise hasn't done their job. The crowd erupted. Not applause. Something deeper. Veterans standing at attention. Families wiping tears. Strangers understanding that they'd witnessed something important. Something true. The moment when a man stopped hiding and started healing. Thomas stood center stage. Worn clothes and weathered face. Dog tags gleaming in sunlight. Surrounded by people who finally saw him. Really saw him. Not as homeless. Not as broken. But as brother. As hero. As someone worthy of care. Still here, Viper. Thomas thought through tears. Finally home. The formal ceremony proceeded with Thomas seated front and center. Speakers took the podium. Told stories of sacrifice. Read names from a wall. Each name honored. Each story remembered. Families stood when their loved ones were mentioned. Pride and grief mixing in equal measure. When they reached Vincent Keller's name, Patricia stood, walked to the podium. Her voice steady despite tears. My brother Vincent was 28 when he died in Mogadishu. He loved the Rangers, loved his team. His last words were about getting them home, about making sure his brother survived. And the man who made sure that happened, who honored Vincent's final order, sits with us today. She looked directly at Thomas. Thank you for staying with him, for keeping your promise, for carrying his memory for 30 years, for finally accepting that you deserve to be here. The crowd responded with quiet affirmation, heads nodding, veterans saluting, understanding passing between those who'd served and those who loved someone who had. Then Rains returned to the podium, held a small box, called Thomas forward. He moved with reluctance, each step toward recognition feeling like walking into fire. But Patricia walked with him. Jeremy, too, brothers flanking him, refusing to let him face this alone. Thomas Ashford, Rains' open box, revealed a new challenge coin, custom minted for this ceremony. On one side, the memorial wall. On the other, coordinates. 2.0369 degrees north, 45.3438 degrees east. Mogadishu, the exact position Thomas had held for 18 hours. This coin represents something we should have given you 30 years ago. Rains' voice carried emotion now. Not just facts, not just ceremony, real feeling, community, gratitude, a place to belong. We failed you when you needed us most. When Elena died, when grief overwhelmed you, when you walked away from everything because facing it hurt too much. The veteran community should have found you, should have helped you, should have made sure you knew you weren't alone. Thomas took the coin, felt the weight of it, the symbolism. the acceptance. But we're here now. Rains continued. And we're telling you that you have a place. Always. That the brotherhood doesn't end because you're struggling. Doesn't end because you're homeless. Doesn't end because you believe you don't deserve help. You're ours. You've always been ours. And we're not letting you disappear again. Walker wheeled forward. Other Mogadishu veterans joined him. Formed a line. One by one, they approached Thomas. Shook his hand. Embraced him. Told him what his actions meant. How studying his defensive hold had saved their lives in later operations. How his call sign was spoken with reverence in Ranger training. How he mattered. A younger man stepped forward. Late 20s. Ranger tab on his shoulder. Sir, I'm Sergeant Marcus Chun. My father was one of the 23 you saved. He came home because of you. Met my mother. Had me and my sister. Built a life. He died 2 years ago. Cancer. But he got 30 more years because you stayed in position. Because you kept your promise. Marcus pulled out a photograph. Showed Thomas. A family portrait. Parents. 2 children. All smiling. All alive because Thomas hadn't left. Hadn't broken faith. Dad talked about you. Marcus's voice broke. Called you Sentinel. Said you were the best of them. Said he owed everything to the man who held the line when it should have been impossible. He wanted to find you. To thank you. He never got the chance. So I'm thanking you for him. For my mom. For my sister. For the life we gotta have, because you're a man who keeps promises. Thomas couldn't speak. Could only nod. Could only accept what was being offered. Forgiveness. Gratitude. Release from the guilt that had defined 5 years of homelessness. The ceremony continued. More names read. More families honored. But everything had shifted. The homeless man removed by security was now the honored guest everyone wanted to meet. To thank. To embrace. During a break between speakers, Walker pulled Thomas aside. Brother, we need to talk about what happens next. You can't go back to the streets. Won't let you. I don't have anywhere else. Thomas's honesty came easier now. Left the house 5 years ago. Haven't been back. Can't face it. Then stay with me. Walker spoke without hesitation. My wife and I have a spare room. Nothing fancy, but it's yours as long as you need it. No pressure. No timeline. Just a place to sleep that isn't concrete. Thomas started to refuse. Old habits. Old belief that he didn't deserve kindness. But Walker cut him off. Don't do that thing where you push help away. Vincent died ordering you to get the team home. That includes you. You're part of the team. You don't get to decide you're not worth saving. We decide, and we say you're worth it. Olivia appeared with paperwork. Benefits. Housing assistance. VA programs specifically designed for veterans experiencing homelessness. Everything Thomas had refused for 5 years. Everything Elena had begged him to accept before she died. I know you don't think you deserve this. Olivia spoke gently. Every homeless veteran I work with believes the same thing. That they failed. That they're broken. That accepting help means weakness. But Thomas, staying in position for 18 hours with a broken shoulder wasn't weakness. And accepting help now isn't weakness either. It's courage. Different kind, but just as real. Patricia joined them. Added her voice. You honor my brother by staying with him. Honor him again by accepting help. By letting the community care for you the way you cared for your team. Vincent would want that. Elena would want that. And I want that. Thomas looked at the memorial wall. At Vincent's name gleaming in bronze. At his own name directly below it. 2 brothers. One dead, one alive. Both honored. Both remembered. He thought about promises. About the one he'd kept to Vincent. About the one he'd broken to Elena. About the chance he was being given to make things right. All right. Thomas's voice grew stronger. All right. I'll accept help. I'll stay with Walker. I'll work with Olivia. I'll try. Trying is all we ask. Walker gripped his shoulder. That's all any of us do. Just keep trying. The ceremony concluded an hour later. Families dispersed to spend time at the wall. To take photographs. To trace names with trembling fingers. Thomas stood before Vincent's name. Patricia beside him. Both silent. Both remembering. He was proud of you, you know. Patricia spoke quietly. In his letters home, he wrote about his sniper. About Sentinel. Said you were the best he'd ever worked with. Said you'd do something legendary someday. He was right. Thomas touched Vincent's name, traced the letters. I miss him. Every day for 30 years. I miss him. I know. Patricia touched her brother's name too. But he's not gone. Not really. He lives in the men you saved. In Marcus Chun, who exists because his father came home. In the Rangers who study your actions and survive their own operations because they learned from yours. Vincent lives in what you did, in what you still do. She turned to face Thomas directly. And he lives in you, in your refusal to leave him behind, in your 18-hour vigil, in your 30 years of carrying his dog tags and keeping faith. You've honored him. Now honor yourself. Accept that you deserve to heal, to live, to find peace. Thomas nodded, unable to speak through emotion, but understanding finally settling in. Survival wasn't betrayal. Living wasn't forgetting. Healing wasn't dishonoring the dead. The reporter approached carefully, asked permission before speaking. Mr. Ashford, the footage of what happened this morning has gone viral. Millions of views. The story is everywhere. People want to help, want to support you. Is there anything you'd like to say? Thomas considered, thought about all the homeless veterans on streets across the country, all the men and women who believed they didn't deserve help, who carried guilt, who hid from recognition. If you're a veteran struggling, Thomas spoke to the camera, to the millions who would watch, to the brothers and sisters still hiding. You're not alone. You're not forgotten. And you deserve help whether you believe it or not. Don't wait 5 years like I did. Don't push away the people trying to reach you. Accept the hand when it's offered. Come home. The camera captured everything. The worn clothes, the dog tags, the tears, the heart-won acceptance. And Thomas Ashford, who'd been invisible for 5 years, became impossible to ignore. 3 days after the ceremony, Thomas sat in Walker's living room. Clean clothes donated by local veterans groups. First shower in weeks. First real bed in 5 years. The walls felt too close. The comfort too much. He'd spent the first night on the floor because the mattress felt wrong. Too soft. Too safe. Walker's wife, Maria, brought coffee. Sat across from him without pity. Just presence. She'd been a Navy corpsman. Understood trauma. Understood that healing wasn't linear. Wasn't simple. Wasn't accomplished through good intentions alone. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. Maria gestured to the landline on the table. News outlets. Veteran organizations. People wanting interviews. Wanting your story. Walker's been screening calls, but there's one you should probably take. Who? Thomas's voice still carried hesitation. Still waiting for the other shoe to drop. For this kindness to have conditions. Senator Williams. Maria watched his reaction. He chairs the Armed Services Committee. Saw the video. Wants to discuss veteran homelessness. Wants to use your story to push for better VA services. Better support systems. He'll be in town tomorrow. Thomas set down his coffee. This is too much. I just wanted to pay respects to Vincent. Not become a spokesman. Not be used for politics. It's not about politics. Walker entered from the kitchen. It's about the thousands of veterans living on streets right now. Believing what you believed. That they don't deserve help. That survival means failure. Your story can reach them. Can show them there's a way back. I'm not qualified to help anyone. Thomas stood. Paced. The room still feeling too small. Too confining. I lived under a bridge for 5 years. I pushed away everyone who tried to help. What kind of example is that? The honest kind. Maria's voice held steel. The kind that shows healing is messy. That accepting help is hard. That you could spend 5 years refusing and still deserve another chance. That's the story homeless veterans need to hear. Not some sanitized version where everything works out easily. The doorbell rang. Olivia stood on the porch with files and a determined expression. She'd been coordinating Thomas's reintegration, benefits applications, medical appointments, job training programs, everything moving faster than Thomas could process. Good news. Olivia settled at the dining table. Your VA benefits were approved. Back pay for the 5 years you were eligible but not receiving. It's substantial. Enough for you to get your own place. If that's what you want. Thomas sat heavily. Money he needed desperately for 5 years. Money that could have prevented winters sleeping in doorways. Summers sweating under overpasses. All of it available if he'd just asked. If he just believed he deserved it. What about the others? Thomas looked at Olivia, the veterans still on streets, still believing they're not worth saving. What about them? That's why I'm here. Olivia pulled out a proposal. Several veteran organizations want to create an outreach program, peer-to-peer. Veterans who've experienced homelessness reaching others still struggling. They want you involved, want your voice, your experience. I'm not a counselor. Thomas protested. I don't have training, don't have credentials. You have something better. Olivia met his eyes. You have the truth. You survived 5 years on streets. You know what it's like to push help away, to believe you're beyond saving. Other homeless veterans will listen to you in ways they won't listen to social workers or therapists. Because you've been where they are. The weight of it settled over Thomas. The responsibility, the expectation. But underneath the fear, something else stirred. Purpose. The thing Elena had begged him to find. The thing Vincent had died protecting. Meaning beyond survival. Patricia called that afternoon. Her voice warm through the phone line. Thomas, I want you to meet someone. Vincent's daughter. Your niece. She's 16. Never met you, but she's heard stories her whole life about Uncle Sentinel. Vincent had a daughter? Thomas's world tilted. He'd known Vincent was married. Hadn't known about children. Hadn't asked. Hadn't wanted to know about the family that grief would destroy. Sarah. Patricia's voice carried pride. She was born 3 months after Vincent died. Raised on stories about her father. About the team that loved him. About the man who stayed with him for 18 hours. She wants to meet you. Thomas gripped the phone, hands shaking. I don't know what to say to her. How do I explain that I couldn't save her father? You don't explain anything. Patricia spoke with the certainty of someone who'd thought this through. You just show up. Let her see that her father's sacrifice meant something. That the man he saved went on to live. That his death wasn't meaningless. They arranged to meet at the memorial wall. Neutral ground. Sacred ground. Thomas arrived early. Stood before Vincent's name, touching the bronze. Whispering apologies. Whispering gratitude. Whispering promises about honoring memory through action. Uncle Thomas? A young voice behind him. Uncertain. Hopeful. He turned. Found a teenage girl with Vincent's eyes. Vincent's stubborn chin. Holding flowers and a photograph of a father she'd never known. Patricia stood beside her, supporting but letting Sarah lead. I'm Sada. The girl stepped forward. My mom died when I was 12. Aunt Patricia raised me. She told me about you. About Mogadishu. About how you stayed with Dad. Thomas couldn't speak. Could only nod. This living legacy of his brother. This proof that Vincent's life had mattered beyond the moment of death. Dad's last words were about getting the team home. Sarah placed flowers at the base of the memorial. Aunt Patricia said, you kept that promise. That 23 men came home because of you. That I exist because one of those men was Marcus Chen's father. That Dad's death created ripples. Saved lives he never knew about. She looked up at Thomas with tears streaming. Thank you for staying with him. For not letting him be alone. For keeping your promise. Thomas knelt. Met her at eye level. Your father was the best man I ever knew. The best leader. He died protecting his team. Giving orders until the end. Nothing I did compares to his sacrifice. Aunt Patricia says you've been punishing yourself for 30 years. Sarah's directness was pure Vincent. Says you think you don't deserve to live because Dad didn't. But that's wrong. Dad died so you could live. So all of you could live. Rejecting help dishonors that. Refusing healing makes his death meaningless. The wisdom stopped Thomas cold. This 16-year-old seeing truth he'd spent 5 years running from. Saying what Elena had said. What Walker had said. What everyone had said, but he'd refused to hear. Your father would want me to accept help? Thomas's voice broke. Dad would want you to live. Sarah spoke with absolute certainty. Really live. Not just survive. He'd want you to use what happened to help others. To make the pain mean something. That's what Aunt Patricia taught me about grief. You don't honor the dead by dying with them. You honor them by living for them. Thomas pulled Sarah into an embrace. This girl he'd never met. This niece who carried Vincent's blood and wisdom. This reminder that sacrifice created legacy. That death could mean life if you let it. I'll try, Thomas whispered. For your father. For you. I'll try to really live. That evening, Thomas sat with Walker and Maria. made decisions that felt impossible 3 days ago, accepted the apartment Olivia had found, agreed to speak at veteran outreach events, committed to the peer counseling program, said yes to the interview with Senator Williams, said yes to healing, to purpose, to the hard work of transforming survival into life. Walker raised a beer. To Vincent, who died protecting his brothers. To Elena, Maria added, who begged Thomas to accept help. To promises kept, Thomas lifted his glass, and promises still being made. They drank together, brothers and chosen family. Proof that coming home wasn't about geography, was about accepting that you belonged, that you mattered. That survival was just the beginning of the story. Still here, Viper. Thomas thought as he fell asleep that night in a real bed, in a real home, finally trying to live instead of just survive. Still here, and finally coming home. 2 weeks after the ceremony, Thomas stood before a packed conference room. Veterans of all ages, active duty, retired, homeless, housed, all gathered to hear him speak at the Regional Veterans Affairs Forum. Senator Williams sat in the front row, Colonel Raines beside him, Patricia and Sarah 3 seats over, Walker in his wheelchair at the aisle. Thomas wore clean clothes, donated suit that almost fit, hair trimmed for the first time in years, beard shaped instead of wild. But his hand still shook as he gripped the podium. Public speaking had never been his strength. Staying silent in sniper hides. That was his skill. Not this. My name is Thomas Ashford. He started the way Olivia had coached. Call sign Sentinel. I'm a Silver Star recipient. And I spent 5 years living under a bridge because I believed I didn't deserve help. The room went completely silent. Every eye on him. Every person leaning forward. I want to tell you why. Thomas's voice grew steadier. Because maybe some of you believe the same thing. Maybe you think accepting help means weakness. Maybe you think survival is betrayal of the ones who didn't make it. Maybe you push away family and friends and services because you don't feel worth saving. Heads nodded throughout the room. Recognition passing between veterans who understood, who'd felt the same, who carried the same guilt. On October 3rd, 1993, my team leader Vincent Keller died in my arms. Thomas didn't look at notes. Didn't need to. The story lived in his bones, in his nightmares, in every waking moment for 30 years. I held position for 18 hours over his body, saved 23 men, came home to medals and recognition, and spent the next 30 years believing I should have died instead of him. Patricia wiped tears. Sarah gripped her hand. Walker's face set hard with understanding and grief. When my wife Elena got cancer, I cared for her until the end. Thomas continued. She made me promise to keep living, to accept help from my brothers, to not shut everyone out. I lied to her, told her I would. Then, 3 days after her funeral, I packed a bag and disappeared. The rawness of it struck the room. No sanitized version, no heroic narrative, just truth, messy and painful and real. I told myself I was protecting people. Thomas's voice hardened, that they were better off without me, that I was too broken, too damaged, too guilty. But that was a lie. I was protecting myself from feeling, from grieving, from facing the truth that survival isn't something you earn. It's chance, chaos, circumstance. Senator Williams leaned forward, taking notes, recording words that would later become policy proposals, testimony before committees, evidence that the system failed veterans in fundamental ways. For 5 years, people tried to help me. Thomas looked at Olivia in the back row. Social workers, Bautrak, fellow veterans, my wife's family. They offer housing, benefits, programs, connection. I refused everything because accepting help meant admitting I was worth saving. And I didn't believe that. Couldn't believe that. The room held collective breath, waiting for the turn, the redemption, the moment where pain transformed into purpose. What change was being forced to accept recognition I didn't want. Thomas allowed himself a small smile. Security tried to remove me from a ceremony honoring my service, accused me of stolen valor, threatened arrest, and in the process of being vindicated, I was surrounded by people who refused to let me hide anymore. He looked at Patricia, at Sarah, At Walker. At the brothers who'd save him by insisting he was worth saving. Vincent's sister found me. Told me her 16-year-old daughter needed to meet the man who stayed with her father. Walker, who I saved in Mogadishu, offered me a spare room. Colonel Rains publicly called out the failure to support me. Marcus Chin told me he exists because his father came home because I kept my promise. Thomas paused, let the weight settle, and Vincent's daughter Sarah told me something that finally broke through. That refusing help dishonored her father's sacrifice. That Vincent died so I could live. That rejecting healing made his death meaningless. Sarah nodded, tears streaming, pride and grief mixing on her young face. I'm standing here 2 weeks later. Thomas spread his hands, living in an apartment, receiving VA benefits, working with Olivia on peer outreach, agreeing to speak at events like this. And it's terrifying. Every day, I wake up believing this is temporary. That I'll mess it up, that I don't deserve it. The honesty landed. Veterans throughout the room, recognizing their own fears, reflected back. But I'm trying. Thomas's voice strengthened, trying to believe that healing is possible, that accepting help is strength, not weakness, that I can honor Vincent and Elena by living instead of just surviving, by using my pain to help others still hiding, still believing they're beyond saving. He looked directly at the homeless veterans in the room. Olivia had made sure they were invited, made sure they had transportation, made sure they knew they belonged. If you're living on streets right now, Thomas spoke only to them. If you're pushing away help, if you believe you're not worth saving, I'm telling you that's a lie. You survived. That takes strength. Accepting help takes more strength. Let people care about you. Let the system work for you. Let your brothers and sisters reach you. A man in the back stood, worn coat, weathered face. Thomas recognized the look, recognized himself 2 weeks ago. How do I start? The man's voice cracked. When I've been refusing help for 3 years. When I've burned every bridge. How do I come back from that? You start exactly where you are. Thomas spoke with certainty born from recent experience. You say yes to one thing, one offer, one connection. You don't have to fix everything today. You don't have to have a plan. You just have to stop running long enough to let someone help. Olivia stood, moved toward the man, whispered something, handed him a card. The beginning of a bridge being rebuilt. Senator Williams took the podium after Thomas finished. Spoke about policy, about funding, about systemic changes needed to prevent veterans from falling through cracks, about using Thomas's story to drive reform. But the veterans in the room weren't listening to the senator. They were surrounding Thomas, shaking his hand, sharing their stories, asking for guidance, seeing proof that coming back from the edge was possible. Walker wheeled close. Brother, you did good. Vincent will be proud. Thomas looked at the crowd of veterans, at the connections forming, at the homeless vet talking with Olivia about shelter options, at Sarah watching with pride, at the life emerging from years of death. Still trying. Thomas said, still here, still trying. That evening, Thomas returned to his new apartment. Small, sparsely furnished, but his. He set Vincent's challenge coin on the nightstand, Elena's photograph beside it. Sarah had given him a picture of Vincent holding infant Sarah, the daughter he'd never gotten to raise. Thomas touched each item. These anchors, these reminders of why healing mattered, why accepting help honored the dead instead of betraying them. His phone buzzed. Text from Patricia. Sarah wants to know if you'll come to dinner Sunday. She's cooking Vincent's favorite meal. Wants to share stories about her dad. Thomas typed back, yes, I'll be there. Another text. From Marcus Chun, the son of the soldier Thomas had saved. Dad's birthday is next month. Having a memorial gathering. Will mean everything if you'd come. Share stories about Mogadishu. Help us remember. Yes. Thomas typed, I'll be there. Message from Olivia. 3 homeless veterans from today's event want to talk to you. Asked specifically for you. Can you meet them tomorrow at the outreach center? Yes. Thomas sent. What time? The yes felt strange, unfamiliar, but each one was practice. Each one was choosing connection over isolation, choosing life over mere survival, choosing to honor promises by making new ones. Thomas lay in bed, real bed in real apartment. Walls that didn't close in quite as much as they had 2 weeks ago. Future that looked less terrifying than it had at the ceremony. Still here, Viper, he whispered to Vincent's memory, to Elena's ghost. Finally learning what you both try to teach me. That surviving is just the start. That living takes courage. That coming home means accepting you belong. Outside, the city moved through its evening rhythm. Inside, Thomas Ashford slept without nightmares for the first time in 5 years. Healing had begun. 6 months later, Thomas stood at the memorial wall with a different kind of purpose. Not watching from the trees, not hiding in shadows, leading a group of 8 veterans through their first visit to the plaza. Men and women he'd met through the peer outreach program. People who'd been where he was, living on streets, believing they were beyond help, finally accepting that coming home was possible. This is Vincent Keller. Thomas touched the bronze name with familiar reverence. My team leader, best man I ever knew. He died ordering me to get the team home. I spent 30 years believing that meant everyone except me, that I didn't deserve to come home because he didn't get to. The veterans listened. 4 of them housed now, 2 in transitional shelter, 2 still on streets but attending programs. All of them at different points in the same journey Thomas had started 6 months ago. But his daughter Sarah taught me something. Thomas continued, that refusing to heal dishonored his sacrifice. That he died so I could live. Really live. Not just survive. A woman named Rachel spoke up. Former Army medic. Homeless 3 years after PTSD made normal life impossible. How do you stop feeling guilty? For being the one who made it when others didn't? You don't stop completely. Thomas met her eyes with hard-won honesty. The guilt doesn't disappear, but you learn to carry it differently. You learn that honoring the dead means using your survival to help the living. Means making the pain count for something. He gestured to the group. You're all here because you said yes to one thing. One offer of help. One connection. That's how it starts. That's how you transform surviving into living. Marcus Chun approached with his family. His mother, his sister, his own children who existed because their grandfather came home from Mogadishu 33 years ago. Thomas, we're having the memorial gathering for Dad today. Will you still join us? Of course. Thomas introduced Marcus to the veterans. Explained the connection. How one 18-hour defensive hold rippled forward through decades. Creating lives. Creating futures. Creating proof that sacrifice mattered. The youngest veteran in Thomas's group, a Marine named David, stared at Marcus's children with something like wonder. You're saying those kids exist because of what happened in 1993? Because someone held a position? Because someone kept a promise? That's exactly what I'm saying. Marcus smiled. My dad came home, met my mom, had me and my sister. We had our own families. All because Thomas stayed when he could have left. All because one person believed promises matter more than safety. David turned to Thomas. I never thought about it like that. That surviving could create something. I've been thinking of it as taking up space. Using resources others deserve more. You're not taking anything. Thomas spoke with conviction earned through 6 months of fighting the same thoughts. You're building something. Every day you choose to stay alive, you're creating possibility. For connection. For purpose. For ripples you can't even imagine yet. Patricia arrived with Sarah, both carrying flowers for Vincent's name. Sarah had grown taller in 6 months. More confident. Planning to study social work in college. Wanting to help veterans like her Uncle Thomas. Like the father she'd never known. Uncle Thomas. Sarah hugged him without hesitation. The relationship easy now. Natural. Family not by blood, but by choice and shared grief, transformed into purpose. Mom and I were thinking, next month is Dad's birthday. We want to do something special at the memorial. Maybe have you speak. Share stories about who he was before he became a name on a wall. I'd be honored. Thomas meant it. The discomfort with recognition had faded. Not disappeared, but transformed into understanding that visibility helped others. That his story gave permission for other homeless veterans to believe healing was possible. Colonel Rains joined them. She'd become a mentor, helping Thomas navigate the advocacy work, connecting him with veteran organizations. ensuring his voice reached policy makers and program directors. Thomas, I have news. Rains held out a folder. The peer outreach program you started is being adopted statewide. 8 new chapters launching next month, all modeled on what you built here. Veterans helping veterans, proving that lived experience matters more than credentials. Thomas took the folder, saw photographs of other homeless veterans who'd found housing, found treatment, found hope, because someone like them had shown it was possible, because he'd stopped hiding and started helping. This is bigger than me. Thomas felt the weight of it, the responsibility, but also the rightness. This honors Vincent. Honors Elena. Honors everyone who tried to help me when I wouldn't help myself. That's the point. Rain smiled. Sacrifice creates legacy. Vincent's sacrifice created you. Your suffering created understanding. Your healing creates hope for others. It's all connected. The memorial gathering that afternoon brought together 50 people. Soldiers Vincent had served with. Families of the 23 saved in Mogadishu. Fellow Rangers who'd studied the legendary defensive hold. Patricia and Sarah, an extended family. Thomas's peer group veterans. Walker and Maria and Olivia and everyone who'd refused to let him disappear. They shared stories, not just about Vincent's death, about his life, his humor, his leadership, his love for his family, his belief that Rangers took care of their own, that nobody got left behind, not the living, not the dead, not ever. Thomas stood when his turn came, spoke about the promise, about 18 hours that felt like 18 years, about carrying Vincent's dog tags for 30 years, about finally understanding that keeping faith meant more than holding position, meant accepting that he was part of the team Vincent died protecting, meant coming home. As the gathering ended, Thomas found himself alone at the memorial wall, not hiding in trees, standing in full view, connected, belonging. The homeless man removed by security 6 months ago now welcomed, valued, needed. Still here, Viper. Thomas touched Vincent's name one more time. Still trying, but not just surviving anymore, really living, helping 8 veterans find their way home, planning statewide expansion, speaking at Sarah's college orientation about PTSD and healing, having Sunday dinners with your family, being Uncle Thomas to your daughter. He touched his own name below Vincent's. 2 Rangers, one who died, one who lived, both honored, both remembered, both making ripples that spread further than either could have imagined. Elena will be proud. Thomas whispered to her memory. You told me to keep living, to accept help, to let my brothers reach me. I finally listened, finally understood that healing isn't betrayal, that living fully honors the dead better than dying slowly. Thomas walked away from the wall, toward the parking lot where Walker waited to drive him to the next peer group meeting, where 3 new homeless veterans would arrive, where he'd tell his story again, where he'd offer proof that coming back from the edge was possible. The reporter who'd filmed the original confrontation had asked for a follow-up interview. 6 months later, what's changed? She wanted to know. Everything, Thomas thought, and nothing. I'm still the man who held position for 18 hours. Still the man who lost Vincent and Elena. Still the man who carries guilt and grief. But I'm also the man who accepted help, who found purpose in pain, who learned that survival is just the beginning of the story, who finally came home. He climbed into Walker's van, settled into the passenger seat, looked back at the memorial one more time, at Vincent's name gleaming in afternoon sun, at the plaza where he'd almost been arrested for attending a ceremony honoring him, at the sacred ground where everything changed. Ready, brother? Walker asked. Thomas smiled. First real smile that reached his eyes in years. Yeah, let's go help some people come home. They drove away from the memorial, toward the outreach center, toward veterans still hiding, toward futures being built one yes at a time, toward proof that promises kept created legacies that rippled forward through time. Still here, still trying, and finally home. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that second chances are possible, that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places, please subscribe to our channel. And right now on your screen, you'll see another incredible story waiting for you. Click it, watch it, And remember that every person you pass on the street has a story. Some of them might just be legendary. Thank you for watching.